Hello, and welcome to this special Veterans Day edition of Vanguard News. I'm Chelsea Cotson, and here are some stories from veterans in our community. Veterans Day celebrates all branches of the military. Our own Chris Mink was fortunate enough to talk to retired Air Force veteran Billy Blackburn to find out more about his experience in the service.
Heroes aren't born, they're made. And I had the privilege to talk to one of my personal heroes, retired Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force, Billy Wayne Blackburn.
My name is Billy Wayne Blackburn. I'm retired Master Sergeant in the Air Force. I went in at 17. My mom signed for me to go in at 17. Took my basic training in Geneva, New York, Sampson Air Force Base. It was open for about 5 years because they did not have room in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas for all the people coming in the military. Well, after getting assigned to Panama City, Florida, which is Tyndall Air Force Base, I met my wife by dragging down Main Street, and I let her win. Hardest part of being in the Air Force was being away from family. And I guess a couple of the hardest things for me was when I left Florida going to Vietnam, leaving my family behind, not knowing if I would see them again. And second, coming back from Vietnam, there was myself and I think 3 other Air Force members aboard that were not dead. We had approximately 20 flag-covered caskets that we brought back. We got married in January '58, and the first child was born in September of 1960, a son, and then in 1962, a daughter was born, Teresa. My first assignments for approximately 10 years was working with jet fighters radar. I was a radar technician on the jet fighters. The last 10 years I spent on ground radar, where we had approximately 150 locations throughout the country that we monitored all aircrafts coming in or coming close to the country. Well, I was stationed in Japan, and I received news that my dad, stepmother, and 5 half-brothers and sisters were all killed in a fire. So I ended up coming back to the States. They flew me back to the States. And I was in the States for approximately 35 days, and then I was due to go back to Japan. And I was in California waiting on a flight to take off the following morning when we received a call that night that said, "Stop him, don't put him on the flight." So I did not go on the flight. Less than 24 hours later, we were all working and looking for names that were on the flight to try to contact the people, their parents. The plane disappeared about 200 miles off the coast of Japan in a storm. No bodies, no plane was ever recovered. I was in the Air Force for 20 years and 10 months. I retired at the age of 37.
I'm Jean Blackburn, and I've been married to this man 60 years come January. Spent 17 years in the Air Force with him, a little over 17 years. My greatest memory of being in the Air Force is being able to see the world. I've seen countries that I would never have seen without being in the military. And I thoroughly enjoyed overseas. I've seen more countries than I have cities in the U.S. The hardest part of being married to a military man back when we were in the military was your isolation tours. I was very fortunate that he was never isolated. He always had enough rank that we could go with him as a family. But it's very hard to say goodbye, like when he got orders for Vietnam, to say goodbye because you didn't know if you'd see him again. That's the hardest part of the military. But it goes with the job.
I served my country, and I was proud to serve my country.
So to all of those who have served in every branch of the military, this Veterans Day, we're saying thank you for all that you've done and sacrificed so that we can call this blessed and free country home.
Not all veterans experience hands-on combat or walk out on a field of war, but that doesn't make them any less of a seasoned hero. UNG reporter Victoria Capek-Gray sat down with Marine Corps veteran Stephen Gray, who shared his experience from boot camp and beyond.
My name is Stephen Gray. August 1984, I joined the Marines on a buddy system with a friend of mine from high school. Went to boot camp on March the 1st, 1985. Boot camp's it's a change in life period. You get off of a bus. Marine Corps they bring you on a bus to Parris Island, South Carolina, and they have yellow footprints painted on the ground, and you're getting yelled at from day one. And you're starting to wonder real quick, why did I do this? But boot camp was 13 weeks. There's a lot of times in boot camp that you question yourself, why am I doing this? But you've got somebody there constantly on your back. Every time you screw up, somebody's in your face. But my thing was I really felt like I wasn't ready to go to college. I wanted to do something with my life. So why not join the Marines? Figured it was the hardest branch of the service. And, if I can do that, why not? I remember my dad telling me, he said, if you can make that, they'll make a man out of you. I was just a punk little boy, 18, 19 years old, had no clue. Thought I knew the world, but had no clue. I'm very proud of that picture. That was a moment in my life that I was lean, mean, fighting machine, and that's what they had trained me to be, But I went into boot camp at 6'1", about 145. I came out of boot camp at 20 pounds heavier. But in 13 weeks, you just go in and I came out about 165, but that's push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups and everything else, a lot of them. Over the years, I'll tell you what's really been good is Facebook. I've got quite a few friends that I was in the Marines with on Facebook. People that I would never thought had did a career.
So how does being a Marine still affect you every day today?
I'm a hard ass. I think my daughter would tell you that. But about 10 years ago, I started my own little landscape company. And my customers know that I'm going to be 100% on task because it's not about me. The guys that have worked for me over the years, some of them like me, some of them hate me. That's their problem. You've got one job to do. Let's do it correctly the first time. Improvise, overcome, and adapt. You learn that in the Marine Corps. You have to improvise every day of your life, every job, whatever it is. Overcome the obstacle, whatever it is. There is no I can't, I don't know how, figure it out and adapt to that situation wherever you're at. I'm 51 years old now. I don't think it probably hit me until I was in my mid-40s how proud I was to be a Marine. It's a title that I earned, and I'll carry that title with me for the rest of my life.
Memorials for veterans aren't always reserved for sacred places. Vanguard correspondent Jake Cantrell explored a memorial kept in an unusual place, the Dahlonega Walmart.
The Walmart Supercenter in Dahlonega, Georgia may not be where you expect to find a wall of honor memorializing veterans of Dahlonega, but one of the most observed memorials in the area lives right on the wall in customer service in the store. The store has made it a point to honor the veterans of the area, allowing customers and employees alike to bring in their photos of veterans to be displayed on the wall. Customer Service Associate Linda Shelton served in the United States Air Force before serving the customers in Walmart and is proud to work for a store that appreciates her service.
I feel very honored that Walmart does recognize the veterans of our wars. They are displayed here, very tasteful, wall of honor. Our flags are displayed. People that come through the town as tourists, just visiting, are so impressed that our store has displayed pictures of our veterans.
The Wall of Honor allows veterans like Shelton to be proud of their service and to be proudly displayed among the community.
I am proud that my picture is on the wall. I'm proud of the service that I have given our country in the U.S. Air Force, and I feel honored when people recognize me, even though it was like 34 years ago. They can still recognize me and thank me for my service, as I do the other people that I recognize up there. And I see people that are on our wall.
Some veterans spent their time on land and some spent it in the air. But for Lee Panatzer, he got to see the world from thousands of feet under the sea.
My name is Lee Panatzer. I was a member of the United States Navy Submarine Service. I joined in 1988 and I served for 6 years. It was a very interesting time in America, interesting time for me. Submarines were really interesting and difficult because it's a very elite group of people. Less than 1% of the military is involved in the submarine service. What I liked about it, was very challenging, and I worked with some of the most intelligent and hardworking people anywhere, in an environment that nobody gets to experience. If you think about it, we did everything that the space shuttle does, except we did it underwater, including making our own power and our own water. So very challenging and interesting 6 years. What I liked the worst was the boredom. Really, being in a submarine was 99% boredom, followed by 1% sheer excitement. And I just can't imagine how boring it gets to be underwater for months at a time and do nothing but work and study and more work. So that was difficult. But, things I liked, it taught me a lot. I'm sure you've heard your peers or your professors or friends tell you how important teamwork is. You don't learn it any better than being in a submarine because you are with the people you're with, and if something happens, you solve the problem or potentially die, and that's true. So teamwork is an amazing skill to grasp and pick up. You can do much more with a group of people you trust than working by yourself. Also gave me a chance to travel. A lot of it was underwater, but I traveled, went through the Panama Canal. I went under the ice pack. I went to Europe, Japan. That was an interesting time for me, and so it was really good. Something else that was really great. One of the reasons I went in was for the education. It helped me get through school. I got out and used the GI Bill to finish my school, and it's was invaluable to me. So, anybody that says there's no way to get through school, they're not trying hard enough. So, something else people don't understand is how difficult, after going through some of these schools and learning sound theory underwater and working with the nuclear technologies and all of the equipment that we used. When I got out, work was easy. School was easy. I mean, relatively speaking, of course. I went back to school, and it was, what do you do? I'm in school for 3 hours a day? Seriously? So I started a business and doubled up my classes and finished my bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in 5 years. So it was a very interesting time in my life. So do I miss being in the military? No. But I think everyone should do it. I really do. Until you experience it, you don't understand why. And then sometimes something will happen, or I'll get a phone call or something from somebody I knew, and it brings back good memories. And you don't remember the bad stuff. In life you generally remember the good stuff. And there's nothing like being in the control room of a nuclear submarine the first time they dive. It's just like being in a movie. So.
Scott Smith, a veteran of the Navy, went from serving his country to making a living out of selling carpet and buying real estate. Vanguard correspondent Colin Hubbard sat down with him to get his story.
For Scott Smith, it wasn't a long stint in the military, but more so a rewarding one that helped him lead him to a path of success. At the age of 62, Smith has gone from living outside of the United States in the Navy to a family man who spends his time working in the carpet business, but always leaving enough room to dabble in real estate, watch football, and play some poker. Smith's time in the military was something that he will never forget, and credits it for allowing him to become the man that he is today.
I was about 18 and a half years old when I decided I would join the military, and it took, I signed up with a friend right away, but it really took about a year and a half to get in. So I was really 20 years old when I went in, and I joined the United States Navy because I wanted to be in the medical field at that point. I served 4 years from 1975 to 1979. I went to basic training in Great Lakes. I went to 6 months of training in San Diego, and then I got to fill out my dream sheet. A dream sheet is where you write down your 3 choices of where you would like to go, 1 overseas, 1 ship, and 1 stateside, and I got my first choice in Naples, Italy, so I got to live in Naples, Italy. We had a naval air station there. What was great about Naples is they really didn't have a barracks or anything. I showed up and they said, you got 30 days to find a place to live. And I was in a different country. So I lived out in the public in Naples, Italy for more than a year, and that was a great time.
So what were some of the things that you got to do in Italy while you were there?
Well, I worked in a hospital, but it was just, we weren't at war in 1975, 76. So it was just like a day job, and then I would have to stay overnight, once a week or twice a week. I don't really remember. But so I worked in the hospital, but I was a young single man, and there were lots of activities. And the biggest thing I learned to do is snow ski. We would ride up to a mountain about 2 hours away from Naples called Mount Rosa, something Rosa Rock or something like that. It was Red Rock in English, and we learned how to ski there, and we went a ton.
So talk about the immediate life after you get out. I know that's where you met your wife when you left, so talk about that.
I just got out and went to work. So I went to work. My uncle owned Tommy Lee Carpets at that time, and I started doing some services for him. At the same time, I was taking a real estate course. And the interest rates were like, when I passed, the interest rates at that point in time were like 16 or 17%, so that didn't last for me. I always loved real estate. Even as a young guy, I always knew I wanted to do something with real estate. And but I sold a couple of things, and then I had to do something that put money on the table every week. And so I started working at the carpet store for my uncle. Next thing you know, I learned how to do that. Next thing you know, I'm selling floor covering, and just kind of made a career out of that. And then once enough time passed and I put a little money away, I started buying real estate. So I'm back in the real estate again, but not with a license.
So where exactly did you meet your wife at?
Well, my wife was working for Tommy during summer. She was going to UGA, and she worked there, and we went out a couple of times and hit it off, and it all blossomed. Yes, and then we had 4 kids.
So talk about your kids. What age range are they, and how was that experience of being a dad to them?
We had 2 originally, and then 10 years later, we had 2 more. So we kind of had 10 years apart, 2 different kids, but we got 4 total. And the youngest one's 25. He's applying to med school. He still lives here, just by a thread, but he still does. And everybody else is out on their own. They're all college educated. They're doing well. You know, they're doing what they want to do. One's a minister, and 2 of them work in insurance, and I got one that works at the hospital. So this is the battalion I was in Great Lakes in boot camp, and there are several battalions going through boot camp at the same time, and you're all competing for color company. This is like those who performed the heist and everything, and we won that. And I thought that was pretty good. I've done pretty well. I think I came from a blue collar town, and I could easily be a little less successful. I'm not mega successful, but I can also see plenty of room for growth. There are things that I could have done better, and I think I probably could have done more, and I still have some life left. I'm only 62, so.
Weston Lee was a graduate of UNG that was killed in combat in April of 2017. Here, we explore some of Lee's journey.
At the University of North Georgia, beside the flagpole where the flag is raised and lowered each day for reveille and retreat, there is a wall where all soldiers that have died in combat are honored. These names date back from World War I until the war on terrorism that is currently going on. One of these names on this memorial is Weston C. Lee. Lee was a graduate of the University of North Georgia in 2014. He was killed in Mosul, Iraq on April 29, 2017, by an improvised explosive device, or IED. Lee was in Iraq for his first deployment that began in December 2016 and was serving as a platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne Division. In October 2015, Lee earned his Ranger tab. He raised his hand and said, "Recognizing that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of the Rangers." Lee did just this. Lee's awards include the National Defense Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Ranger Tab, the Parachutist Badge, and the Army Service Ribbon. Posthumously, he was awarded the Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, and the Meritorious Service Medal. After Lee's death, some of his friends set up a GoFundMe account to try and raise $25,000. They reached the goal with no issues and have since then raised over $64,000 to set up a scholarship in Lee's name and help the family pay for funeral expenses. Lee left a legacy for all University of North Georgia commissioned officers to follow. His selfless service and love for the military and his country were traits any officer should possess, and Lee was the ultimate example of this.
Many stories on Veterans Day feature the veteran themselves, but the spouses are equally important. Our own Kaylin Walden spoke to Joyce Hagwood, wife of Vietnam veteran Teddy Hagwood, about her journey as an Army wife.
think he would do it all over again because he was proud to serve the country that he loved, and he was, in a sense, protecting his family from the war being here by serving our nation and our country in a foreign land. And I think he would do it all over again, and I understood what was going on. We were planning to wait until he was drafted and did his tour to be married, but when he actually got drafted, we started talking and decided we would get married when he finished his basic and AIT training, and that's what we did. He was drafted in April and we were married in September of 1969. I was home that day. I had had the flu or something, was sick, and I was home and my mother was there, and we got a telegram that said that my husband had been wounded in action. It gave no details. We did not know if limbs were missing or exactly what had happened, but that he was wounded in action, and it was almost 3 weeks before we knew that the nature of his wounds. He did not lose any limbs. He was in the hospital in Saigon, Vietnam. Actually had surgery on the field where he was wounded because his lungs collapsed, and he would have died without that surgery. So they did that surgery on the battlefield and then put him in a hospital, and from there in a couple of weeks he went to Tokyo, Japan, where he was able to recover somewhat and was even able to walk around, because I remember him going to see a John Wayne movie, and he said, I didn't know what they were saying because it was in Japanese. We had just laid down to go to sleep and a plane came over, and the sound of the plane must have made him have a flashback to Vietnam, and he thought the enemy was there, and he started like slinging his arms and trying to get out of bed, and I didn't realize what was going on until I turned the light on, and I saw the look in his eye, and we had to rush him to the hospital to get a shot to calm him down because he was having a flashback. He thought he was back in Vietnam on the battlefield and that the enemy was attacking. When he wanted to talk about it, and I did wait until he was ready to talk about things that had happened, that I listened, and then he had much support from his family regarding that also. So he was able to talk about it. Sometimes he would talk a little while and he'd say, I don't want to remember that, you know, but I would listen. So I felt like I helped him in that respect. We talked a lot about how he coped. He loved things, he loved hunting. He did not hunt for several years after he came back from Vietnam, but when he got back into hunting, I have a picture here on my refrigerator of a deer he was very proud of getting the kill. And he liked to eat the deer meat, but he loved the sport of hunting. He loved golf. He was a very outgoing person, and I think that helped him deal with the ramifications of the war.
I'm Chelsea Kotzen, and thanks for tuning in to this special edition of Vanguard News. Until next time.